Hello and welcome to Digging with Dugan. Today we're going to talk some more about Rome, and I thought it'd be good to go more in depth about the conquest that conquered Italy, the one that really kick-started the Republic, because in the early days in Italy there won't be too many opponents who will really face too much of a threat in the real long term or severe actual. Basically, once we get into the Samnite Wars and the wars for citizenship, it never really truly looks like the ship's gonna tip over. Rome seems pretty stable, pretty strong. The Romans themselves, yeah, they don't seem too threatened by most of those opponents outside of the panic of the civil wars when it comes to the wars for citizenship. So first I'm going to talk about the Etruscans, because they were really the earliest of the big conquests, and the one that really mattered, because the Etruscans were the Roman cultural superior. They were to the north of Rome, and they called them the Etruscans. They were a band of city-states that were incredibly well-educated, sophisticated. They did a lot of metalworking. They had a sophisticated society with three-story buildings. Hilariously, one of my favorite facts about the Etruscans is they invented the word demenstrated. It's a word that implies, you can look it up, but it's the word that means to be thrown from a second-story building or taller. Yeah. I love that your culture is sophisticated enough to build three-story buildings, but you're also barbarian enough to have a word for when someone is thrown from them. Pretty cool. The Etruscans, though being sophisticated, that shows they're not an unwarlike people, but they were a disunited people. So the Romans conquered them piecemeal, and by the time the Etruscans realized that they were being conquered, it was too late. If you believe the Roman sources, the very first king of Rome was an Etruscan himself. So many historians believe that Rome was once a vassal to an Etruscan king. And there's probably some truth to that, because of course for the longest time Rome was shithole nowhere, and the Etruscans were the big boys in the block. And before the Etruscans, it can be said, just for this nice little history tidbit, the Turanians existed. They get extincted by Celtic migration, but that is why it is called the Mediterranean Sea. Big one there. It took most of my life, I didn't know that one. So yeah, it's weird. It's meta, literally the word, because it's out of the blue. It's weird. It's strange. It used to be the Mediterranean Sea, because they were the big traders. They got extincted by the Celts, so the Romans will slap around later. Manlius, we heard about Manlius slapping them around a little bit. And so, the Etruscans fell. And it can be said that gladiatorial debuts, many say that they come from Etruscan funeral games, which can be seen as transferring to the Romans in the form of a funeral game, which the incredibly wealthy would have some gladiators fight at the funeral. And contrary to popular depiction, gladiators didn't drop dead every day. So it was a big deal for someone to die at your funeral, Your death is worth the death of another human being. That's, there's only so many people out there. Pretty big deal. So that became a thing, and it really encouraged the primordial desire for gladiatorial debuts. And the gladiator ring became the location to go to know who your army has been beating up lately. Because that's where the captives will be sent if they're skilled at arms, and the Romans want to make some money out of them. So the Etruscans have a mixed effect on the Romans. They civilized them to an extent, but they also introduced them to some barbaric practices which will get out of hand later. Yeah. Well, that's an opinion piece. Some pretty extravagant things went on in the arena in the later days. Um, but, the animal fighting has always been a thing. Some more sickly things happened in there, but we won't go too in depth in there, otherwise all the YouTube gods won't like me. uh, so, yeah, yeehaw for the Etruscans. More Roman rambles. Hope to piece together, an easy form, entertaining way of understanding the Empire. I know I myself enjoy very in-depth stuff, but the average Joe has a hard time of getting an introduction. So I won't preach too much. Have a hell of a